On November 5, 1960, at noon inside a Dallas hotel room, Ward Bond collapsed and never got up again. He was 57 years old. His wife was with him when it happened, a massive heart attack, sudden and without warning. And by the time he was taken to the hospital, he was already gone. His doctor had actually warned him not to make the trip to Dallas that weekend, told him he needed rest, that his body was running too hard. Ward Bond looked at that doctor and said, "Well, hell, I'm only going to die once. What difference does it make where it is?" And maybe it didn't. Born April 9, 1903, in Benkelman, Nebraska, Bond had spent over 3 decades playing tough, dependable characters across more than 200 films in It's a Wonderful Life, The Maltese Falcon, Gone with the Wind, always the one you remembered even though someone else had the poster. But it was Wagon Train that finally gave him the top billing he'd earned his whole life, as the gruff and loyal wagon master Major Seth Adams. What most people don't know is that Ward Bond had never been a leading man before, not once in 200 movies. Wagon Train was his first real starring role, and it became the #1 Western on American television. He never got the chance to see where it went. The show went on without him, his character simply vanishing with no explanation, as if the trail just swallowed him up. John Wayne gave the eulogy. Bond had left Wayne the very gun Wayne accidentally shot him with on a hunting trip. They'd laughed about it for 30 years. His ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean between Newport Beach and Catalina Island. A man who waited his whole life for the spotlight, and when it finally came, he only had 3 seasons to enjoy it. Robert Horton, born July 29, 1924, in Los Angeles, California, had spent 5 seasons as Flint McCullough, the rugged frontier scout of Wagon Train, and when the show hit its absolute peak in the ratings, he quit. Not because he was fired, not because he was unhappy. He just refused to spend the rest of his life saying they went that way. That kind of stubbornness, that refusal to be boxed in, was who Robert Horton was from the start. The show collected 7 Primetime Emmy nominations during its run, and Horton was a huge part of why. After leaving in 1962, he went straight to Broadway, played the charming con man Bill Starbuck in 110 in the Shade for over 300 performances in Manhattan, and then toured in nightclubs and theaters as a singer, often alongside his wife Marilyn. He made his final television appearance on Murder, She Wrote in 1989, and then simply retired. In November 2015, he took a bad fall. The injuries from that fall were serious, and by early 2016, he had been admitted to hospice care. Robert Horton passed away on March 9, 2016, in Los Angeles, the same city where his whole story began. The call came while the series was still in shock. Ward Bond had just died, and producer Howard Christie said he only ever considered one name for the job, John McIntire. Born June 27, 1907, in Spokane, Washington, McIntire had already guest starred on Wagon Train and impressed everyone, including Bond himself. Where Bond was loud and commanding, McIntire was quieter, more grounded, with a deep radio-trained voice that gave every line a kind of weight. He stepped in as Christopher Hale from 1961 all the way to the end of the series in 1965, and then went on to replace another fallen colleague, Charles Bickford, on the Virginian. He and his wife, Jeanette Nolan, married since 1935, were one of Hollywood's longest-lasting partnerships, 56 years together. He was 83 years old when he died on January 30, 1991, at his home in Pasadena, California, from emphysema and lung cancer. He had outlived his own son Tim, who died of heart problems in 1986 at just 41. Born July 29, 1933, in Troy, New York, as Leonard Leroy Lee, he had already become an international sensation on Laramie before stepping into Wagon Train as Scout Cooper Smith for the show's final 2 seasons. What's funny is that Fuller and Robert Horton shared the exact same birthday, just 9 years apart. And when Fuller joined the show, fans kept comparing them. Fuller always made a point of saying he wasn't replacing Horton. Horton had already left a full year before Fuller arrived. After Wagon Train ended, he went on to play Dr. Kelly Brackett on the hit drama Emergency from 1972 to 1977. Today, at 92 years old, Robert Fuller is one of the last links to that golden era of TV westerns. He lives on a ranch, still attends nostalgia conventions, still shakes hands with fans who grew up watching him ride across the screen. Born February 2, 1903, in Mound City, Missouri, he had spent decades as a stuntman before Wagon Train, a tough rodeo circuit, broken bones kind of career, and then Ward Bond convinced him to join the show as Charlie Wooster, the crotchety, white-bearded cook who drove the chuck wagon and drove everybody crazy. McGrath brought something real to Charlie that you can't fake. He'd actually lived that physical, outdoor life, and it showed in every scene. Charlie was the emotional glue of the train, the comic relief, the man who cooked for both wagon masters across all 8 seasons. And McGrath somehow never missed a single episode through all of it. There were no Emmy nominations for a character like Charlie. He wasn't the lead, he wasn't the drama, but fans loved him in a way that goes beyond awards. 2 years after the show ended its run in 1965, Frank McGrath died of a heart attack on May 13, 1967, in Beverly Hills, California. He was 64 years old. It was Terry Wilson who made the phone call nobody wanted to make. When Ward Bond dropped dead in a Dallas hotel room in November 1960, it was Wilson who picked up the phone and called John Wayne. "Hold on," he said, "or just drop dead." The two of them cried together on the line. Terry Wilson, born September 3, 1923, in Huntington Park, California, had been Bond's stunt double and friend long before Wagon Train. They had worked side by side on John Ford films, and it was Bond who specifically asked Wilson and McGrath to be regulars on the show. Wilson played assistant trailmaster Bill Hawks for all 267 episodes, never missing a single one. "I'm Bill Hawks on the show and off," he once said. In his final 2 years, he grew progressively weaker from health complications. He died at home in Canoga Park, California, on March 30, 1999, from congestive heart failure. Before he ever climbed onto a wagon train, Denny Miller had already been Tarzan. Born April 25, 1934, in Bloomington, Indiana, Miller was a 6'4" college basketball player at UCLA, playing under the legendary coach John Wooden, when a Hollywood talent agent spotted him on Sunset Boulevard. Within a year, he was swinging through trees in Tarzan, the Ape Man, 1959, as the first blonde Lord of the Jungle. A few years later, he joined Wagon Train as Scout Duke Shannon from 1961 to 1964. He went on to become the Gorton's fisherman, that yellow rain slicker guy in the fish stick commercials for over a decade, one of the most recognizable faces in American advertising. In January 2014, he was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, a cruel illness that slowly robs the body of everything. On September 9, 2014, at the age of 80, Denny Miller passed away at his home in Las Vegas, Nevada. Norman Levitt, born December 1, 1913, in Lansing, Michigan, was one of those faces television couldn't get enough of. Appearing across 11 episodes of Wagon Train in a rotating cast of small roles over the years, alongside dozens of other classic shows including Gunsmoke, The Twilight Zone, and The Beverly Hillbillies. He retired from acting in 1974 and spent his later years painting in oils, journaling, and dining at the Los Angeles Country Club. In his final years, he suffered from the complications of dementia. On December 11, 2005, exactly 10 days after his 92nd birthday, Norman Levitt passed away in Solvang, California. John Doucette, born January 21, 1921, in Brockton, Massachusetts, was the kind of character actor whose face you always recognize, but whose name you could never quite place. He appeared in over 280 films and TV shows across 46 years, including multiple episodes of Wagon Train, and his career peaked with major roles in Patton and True Grit. He had 8 children and was devoted to his wife Catherine until her death in 1991. 3 years later, on August 16, 1994, John Doucette died at his home in Banning, California. He was 73. The cause was cancer. Kevin Hagen, born April 3, 1928, in Chicago, Illinois, passed through Wagon Train as a guest player before earning the role that millions would remember him by. Doc Hiram Baker on Little House on the Prairie, a warm, kind presence across 200 episodes of that beloved series. In 2004, he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. He spent his final year at his home in Grants Pass, Oregon, the quiet corner of the Pacific Northwest he had moved to in 1992. On July 9, 2005, Kevin Hagen died at home, surrounded by the Oregon hills he loved.